Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan. On this Saturday, July 17th, we're going to jump right into it because we have a shorter segment for the statewide view tonight. Hazy sunshine out there, you may have noticed. That's smoke aloft from Siberian wildfires, some 10,000 feet aloft, so it doesn't pose a threat to respiratory breathing issues here on the ground, but nevertheless, it can come in from a long distance away. We also have a potential for some isolated scattered thunderstorms, south central areas, parts of the eastern interior, as we head through the next couple of afternoons, especially around the Talkeetna Mountains and areas off to the east, as well as even southwest, along and south of the Alaska Range. Highest fire danger will be along and north of the Alaska Range, extending through the Yukon Flats the next couple of days. And looking ahead here into early next week, widespread wet and cooler weather will gradually spread across western Alaska, and it'll be pushing farther inland as we head into the day Tuesday and Wednesday. Fire danger, again, is highest this weekend. Central and northeast areas along and north of the Alaska Range, all the way through the Yukon Flats. So again, be careful if you're going to be doing any type of recreating or anything that requires outdoor burning. You may want to refrain from it. As far as looking at satellite imagery, we have a weak low pressure continuing to spin there off of the southeast panhandle, southwest of Haida, and then back to the northwest. We have a trough moving through now, bringing some rain along the northwest coast, including the Seward Peninsula, along with rather lower cloud cover and some areas of fog. Main low pressure now is out there through the western Aleutians, lifting off toward the northeast. And ahead of it, an occluded front that'll be cutting across the central and then eastern Aleutians as we head into the day tomorrow. But again, there is that potential for some isolated storms to fire up this afternoon and evening, and again Sunday afternoon and evening, especially along and south of the Alaska Range. There's some low-level moisture, and we get temperatures well into the 70s, even lower 80s. That provides enough instability to cause those scattered showers and isolated storms to pop. Well, here we have the weather map. Again, low pressure there out in the Gulf southwest of Haida, the main area low pressure out there in the western Aleutians. We have a ridge of high pressure that extends from the southwest peninsula across the interior of the state, and that's given us some outstanding weather here the past few days. As we head through tonight, we'll see little change in those few features, and by Sunday, again, an isolated shower storm popping up there, especially along south of the Alaska Range. There will be a cold front off to the northwest there, coming through the Arctic Ocean, Chukchi Sea, approaching the northwest coast, but it's going to have a tendency to kind of wash out and stall. Meanwhile, the ridge of high pressure that's brought the southwest interior and the Yukon Valley and many areas of south central this gorgeous summer weather, that's breaking down, and that Aleutian low is going to hurl another round of moisture up into the west coast, especially Monday into Tuesday, and that's going to bring an overall cooling trend. So here's the temperatures forecasted here. Sunday morning, lower 50s generally there through the southeast, and mid 50s or so across much of the south central areas, including Anchorage down through the Kenai and Kodiak. High temperatures Sunday afternoon could still be up near 80 degrees in the Mat-Su Valley. Otherwise, most everybody inland a bit should be in the 70s, with coastal areas remaining primarily in the 60s. And then lows Monday morning will be around 50 to the lower 50s across the southeast, and then back through the interior of the southwest there, especially like the Kuskokwim River Basin in the 50s, with high temperatures again Monday afternoon in the 70s away from the coastline. In fact, 78 there at McGrath, 76 at McAllen. It could even hit 71 at Haines in the northern portion of the southeast. Low temperatures Sunday morning along the Arctic coast will generally be 40 plus, lower mid 50s along the Yukon River, 40s across the Seward Peninsula. Temperatures a few degrees cooler come Sunday afternoon. Fairbanks 75, 77 there at Fort Yukon. And readings up along the north slope there, still relatively warm in the 60s with some isolated 70-degree readings. Far west cooler, upper 40s at the coast, 50s as you get inland, and then lows Monday morning will generally be in the 40s along the north slope and in through the Seward Peninsula, but generally 50 to mid 50s there across the Yukon Valley, and a little warmer again. You can see 80-degree readings from around Galena eastward on up through Fairbanks and Yukon Flats area. So low temperatures Sunday morning will dip down into the lower mid 50s across the interior of the southwest, and readings generally mid-40s for the Aleutian chain. High temperatures for Sunday afternoon could be 72 or so at Bethel, 75 at King Salmon, even locally warm along the Kuskokwim River. Isolated 80-degree reading, not out of the question. Monday morning lows will, with increased cloud cover, will generally be in the 50s across the interior, upper 40s to lower 50s along the coast, and extending out along the Aleutian chain. And then for Monday afternoon, look for temperatures still in the mid-Yukon Valley, and especially the upper portions of the Kuskokwim River basin there in the 70s. But it'll start to cool down along the west coast. Nunavik Island there only 53. And as we get down along the Alaska Peninsula, readings there will be confined mainly to the upper 50s for highs, mid-50s along the Aleutians. So here's the temperature outlook July 23rd through the 27th. It's still looking like areas of the north and northeast along the Brooks Range, Arctic coast down into central areas, a little above normal, a little below normal temperatures for the southeast, as well as portions of the west and the Alaska Peninsula. And then precipitation should average near or below normal across much of the state, so not looking especially wet. However, wetter weather will be returning throughout the western third or half of the state here as we head through Monday and especially Tuesday into Wednesday. So that's a look at our statewide weather. And as I said, try to get out and enjoy it, because we've enjoyed just a fine stretch of warm and dry weather, especially across the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
It's time now for flying weather, and if you have a flight planned this Sunday into Monday, we'll continue to see a few different features. Weak low pressure off the coast of Haida Gwaii continue to impact areas of the southeast, not as much so as the low that's sitting out in through the western Bering, with an occluded front that'll be moving through the central and eastern Aleutians. And then up along the Arctic coast, we'll be watching a cold front approaching from the northwest. That front, though, will have a tendency to stall out as we head into later Monday and on Tuesday. But for Sunday afternoon, there is a potential for isolated to scattered thunderstorms to develop along and south of the Alaska Range to nearly coastal areas, including the Talkeetna Mountains. And so that's one area there. And then off to the west, we have extensive IFR conditions off the west coast, coming inland a bit there through western Seward and the tip there of the northwest around Point Lay. And then for Monday morning, overall very widespread VFR conditions across much of the interior and even portions of the southeast panhandle, with IFR there along the northwest coast and west central areas of the Yukon River Delta and Nunavik Island, and then the eastern and central Aleutians. Front along the eastern Aleutians continues to slowly press eastward. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms will once again be possible along and mainly south of the Alaska Range into perhaps even the mid-upper Kuskokwim River Basin. And then taking a look at past conditions, a little brief period of IFR early Sunday morning at Anatuvik becoming VFR. That'll also be the case at Adigan. And then for Lake Clark and Merrill, there's the potential for thunderstorms to develop in the afternoon and evening in the vicinity of those passes and also through the west entrances. Less so as you head toward Cook Inlet, a little more stable air there with general VFR conditions there for the late morning and afternoon. And Rainy Pass could see isolated storm, especially along the east entrance and flying there eastward. As far as Windy Pass, MVFR becoming VFR with a few storms possible the further south you travel there from around and south of the south entrance. Isabel also, south entrance southward could be an isolated storm with VFR conditions. Mentasta could see MVFR conditions with storms in the vicinity of the pass developing there Sunday afternoon. And also at Tanita, there could be an isolated storm or two develop within the vicinity of the pass with VFR conditions generally expected. And Portage will also see the possibility of an isolated storm in the vicinity of the pass, and especially as you fly further west past the west entrance. And then throughout the northern portion of the southeast panhandle, Chilkoot and White will see VFR conditions become MVFR as we head through the afternoon. Freezing levels are generally around or above 10,000 feet across much of the interior, around or below 8,000 feet along the north slope and Arctic coast, as well as the southern half of the southeast panhandle, and generally around or above 12,000 feet extending outward across the Alaska Peninsula in through the eastern Aleutians. Sunday icing potential will exist near Haida there in the southeast between 9,000 and 17,000 feet, and then back toward the west there across the Bering, that low pressure system and occluded front. Central eastern Aleutians 12,000 to a flight level of 19,000 feet, and then further west 10,000 to a flight level of 18,000 feet, and certainly icing potential would exist in the vicinity of isolated scattered thunderstorms along and south of the Alaska Range. Jet stream level winds are strongest out there across the western Aleutians, upwards to 75 knots from the northwest, as we have that low pressure circulation there near the central Bering Sea, weak high pressure circulation there near the Seward Peninsula, and another low pressure circulation southwest of Haida. As we drop down to mid levels near 9,000 feet, still that low pressure there in the southern Gulf, not much in the way of significant winds, but a band of 40 to 45 knot winds from the southwest just out there through the eastern half of the Bering Sea, and then along the Aleutian chain, winds out of the west anywhere from 35 to 50 knots. Coming down to 3,000 feet, weak high pressure circulation over Bristol Bay, but stronger band of winds offshore there through the eastern Bering, upwards to 40 knots from the southwest, and then west winds upwards to 40 knots there across portions of the central Aleutians. And turbulence potential will exist primarily from the surface to 4,000 feet in the northwest there, as well as a little pocket around the Yukon Flats, and then back toward the southwest there through the central and eastern Aleutians. Also keep in mind there could be turbulence in the vicinity of thunderstorms across south central areas.
Here at the end of the Earth, it still feels like a place for raw exploration and adventure. It's vast in all directions and ground zero for some of the biggest questions we have about the climate. But when we decided to make a series about the frozen places on Earth, we knew there would be one hurdle we would need to jump over first. What is the cryosphere?
The what?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
While I'm aware of the cryosphere, I don't actually know what it is.
It has something to do with ice. All right, that's all I got.
How do you get people acquainted with the cryosphere when most of us don't even know what it is?
Hey, so here we are in Washington, D.C., standing on the roof of NASA headquarters. That's the Capitol building right behind me. And what headquarters does is kind of serve as the focal point to connect the dots.
That's Dr. Tom Wagner, NASA's cryospheric program scientist at headquarters. In short, Tom is responsible for making sure NASA knows what the current status of the cryosphere is.
The cryosphere is everything from the snow that falls by your house to the icy reaches of the Himalayas, to the big ice sheets of Antarctica all the way at the South Pole, and also the frozen ground of the Arctic, and even some of that frozen ground that's currently under the ocean.
If you had to break it down, you'd have a mix of sea ice, snow cover, permafrost, ice sheets, and glaciers.
Right now, our best predictions are that sea levels will rise anywhere from 1 to 3 feet within the next 100 years. 3 feet of sea level rise has the potential to displace about 100 million people, which is a lot of people that need to find new homes.
Our current reality places us at a near tipping point, and the cryosphere is playing a huge part in that delicate balance.
So one of the things people don't know about NASA is that we study the Earth, and we've been doing that since NASA's inception back in the 1950s. And we study the frozen part of the Earth in a variety of ways.
Missions like SNOW-X, Airborne Snow Observatory, Oceans Melting Greenland, Operation Icebridge, Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, and countless other labs and individual researchers stand at the forefront of monitoring the cryosphere. But this year was a particularly big year.
3
2, 1, and liftoff of Grace Follow-On, continuing the legacy of the Grace mission of tracking the movement of water across our planet.
2 state-of-the-art satellite missions are being launched in a single year as part of a major attempt to understand Earth's frozen places. Our scientists are answering hard questions, sharing stories from the field, and giving their best predictions for what we can expect of a warming world. We're taking you with us as we follow NASA explorers on their journey to the frozen ends of the Earth as they study our rapidly changing world from satellites, planes, and boots on the ground.
What we can do really well from orbit is we can tell when a surface of land is covered in snow. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
What we think of snow depends a lot on where it falls. If you live in the eastern US, maybe it's fun. Or maybe it's just a pain.
But if you live in parts of the world where they depend on the water that's in the snow for a large fraction of their total water that they use for drinking, for agriculture, for industry, or for hydropower, the snow is a very important natural resource. For example, in the western part of the United States, 80 to 90% of their renewable water comes from snow.
Snow is one part of the cryosphere that many of us have actually encountered before, but it also plays a critical role in regulating the Earth's climate. Through decades of remote sensing, NASA has kept a close eye on the ebb and flow of snow cover.
We now have a 52-year record of snow cover in the Northern Hemisphere, and we can see changes in the extent of snow cover over the time period, particularly in the last few decades, where we can see that the snow cover has been retreating. It's been melting a lot earlier in the springtime.
The extent is relatively easy to do, and it has been done over the years. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
That tricky part is known as the snow-water equivalent, or how much water would actually be in a layer of snow if it melted. NASA and its partners have taken to the air to help solve this elusive mystery. First, there's the Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO, a small plane outfitted with a couple of instruments, one of which measures snow depth using LiDAR. LiDAR measures distance using light from lasers. Since 2014, ASO has flown over basins in California and Colorado, taking before and after looks at snow depth. Scientists subtract the snow-free summer data from the snow-on winter data to get an idea of the snow depth. There's no single way to measure all types of snow across the globe, and so NASA's other airborne campaign, SnowX, is testing different combinations of sensors. This winter, SnowX will test a new instrument, the Snow-Water Equivalent Synthetic Aperture Radar and Radiometer, or SWISAR.
SWISAR consists of 2 main components, one of them being the radar and the second one being the radiometer.
So with the radar providing the depth of the snow and the radiometer providing the density of the snow, we could put those 2 things together and get the snow-water equivalent. Here in the chamber, we're going to measure different radiation patterns at our different frequencies and do some full system testing in this chamber. This chamber kind of enables us to isolate various types of radiation and interference. And in about a month, we're going to take the instrument, mount it on a Twin Otter in the Grand Mesa in Colorado, and we're going to fly it over the Grand Mesa and take various different measurements. This is what we call our engineering flight.
Making sure the sensors are calibrated is key in order to face the challenges nature will throw at them.
Half of the area that gets covered by snow every winter contains trees and forest. And the trees make it difficult for the sensors to see the snow that's underneath the trees, so it makes it difficult for us to measure how much snow there is. After the snow's had a chance to sit on the ground for a while, it gets denser and denser and denser over time, and it changes, which is another reason why snow is very challenging to remotely sense. It doesn't stay the same, it's constantly changing. One of the things that we often do in the field is go dig what we call a snow pit. We literally dig a pit in the snow so we can see all the different layers. The layering is very important.
All this digging is part of ground truthing SNOWX, a way of matching up what the airborne instruments see and what is actually sitting on the surface. The ultimate goal of SNOWX is to figure out what the best combination of instruments would be for a future satellite mission in order to get a global picture of snow.
We need to know how much snow is in a snowpack, because if we have too much snow and the snow melts too fast, then you can get flooding. And if you don't have enough snow, or if the snow melts too early, that can lead to a longer wildfire season, a more intense drought, and we need to know these things for water resource planning.
After we had a record that was about 15, 20 years long, we started noticing that the extent of the ice in the Arctic was getting smaller over time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We start with the sea ice edge, and we can continue to see that the Chukchi Sea is largely open, and we're going to see some areas open up, especially along the far northwest coast as you go from Wainwright to Utqiagvik on over even toward Prudhoe Bay, as the winds are going to be more offshore from the southwest. Rather brisk, upwards to 30 knots along the northwest coast here as we head into Sunday, though it will relax a bit as a cold front approaching from the northwest slows down, washes out, and that gradient relaxes a bit. Otherwise, the forecast here for Sunday for the southeast inner waterways, the southern half, winds 10 knots, 2-footers there around Ketchikan. Northerly there at Petersburg, 2-footers, and then going up Lynn Canal southeasterly at 10 knots and 2-foot waves. Winds are kind of a mix there along the Gulf Coast. Easterly, the southern half, 10-15 knots, waves around 5 feet. Once you get up toward Yakutat westward from the south at 10 knots and waves 3 feet. On Monday, look for north-northwest winds across the southern half of the inner waterways at 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3 foot waves. Southerly winds 15 knots, a couple footers there in Lynn Canal. And then along the Gulf Coast, winds will be out of the generally northwest to north at 10 to 15 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet. And across the south central areas, variable winds off the Kenai and across Prince William Sound around 10 knots, waves 2, maybe 3 feet. In through Cook Inlet, winds will be a little more variable, though the southwest and west 10 to 20 knots with maybe some 3 to 6 footers toward the mouth of Cook Inlet. And on Monday, winds continue variable around 10 knots across the north end of the Gulf and Prince William Sound with waves 2-3 feet at best. And along the length of the Cook Inlet, we are looking for winds to have a southerly component, whether southeast, southwesterly, or southerly at about 20 knots and waves 3 to 5 feet. Now across the southwest peninsula, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, winds will be west-southwest 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet. And more southeasterly, and then onshore there for areas of the Bering side with waves only 2 to 3 feet. And as what's left of an included front, more of a trough approaching from the west, winds will try to turn more south-southwesterly ahead of it. Waves 4 to 6 feet on the Pacific side and 2 to 5 feet heading up along the Bering side. And then across the Aleutian chain, winds will be largely from the south around 25 knots, waves 6 to 8 feet on the North Pacific side, and generally 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side. And then in the wake of this trough, or what was left of the occluded front, winds pick up from the southwest around 30 knots, and waves on the North Pacific side will be 8 to 10 feet, and 8 to 10 feet as you get away from the shelter of the Aleutians there on the Bering side. Across the western coast, winds will be southeast to south, 20-25 knots, waves generally around 8 feet, St. Matthew down through St. Paul and St. George. And then up along the west coast there, north of Nunavik Island, 6 to 7 feet with onshore southwesterly flow there into Norton Sound with waves of 3 feet. And then on Monday, not quite as strong winds, though the southern areas there could see winds from the southwest and south, 25 knots, waves 6 to 8 feet there, especially towards St. Paul and St. George. And more of a east-southeast flow off the mainland at 15 knots, waves 3 feet in Norton Sound. Now here's where the winds pick up along the Arctic coast, along the northwest coast especially, upwards to 30 knots there, Chukchi, waves 9 to 10 feet. Ice still there, though, along the shore, Utqiagvik westward to Kaktovik, and look for those winds to come down a bit here on Monday, though offshore flow continuing along the Arctic coast at 10 to 15 knots, and southwest winds 15 to 20 knots, especially from Wainwright southward to Kotzebue. So, looking at the surface map here for Sunday, we'll have that approaching cold front in the northwest, creating those stronger winds, better gradient there along the northwest coast. There's the low out over the Bering, the primary one with what was left of the occluded front, that trough lifting its way northeastward into the eastern Bering. Ridge of high pressure over the interior will begin to break down, and we still have a low sitting southwest of Haida-Gwaii there in the Gulf, and there's another little weak circulation up toward the north there of Kodiak Island. And heading into Monday, features the ridge of high pressure will continue to relax, and that front along the northwest coast, the gradient will relax as that front washes out and becomes more stationary, with that low pressure and trough approaching the west coast with more rain and a little stronger winds. That does it for our show tonight. I'll be back on Sunday for more Alaska Weather Show.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.